Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course, happy to do it.
Yes. So for people who don't know who you are, Yvette, go ahead and introduce yourself and just tell us a little about what you do.
My name is Yvette Cherkala, and I am a touring VIP event coordinator, and I dabble in a lot of different types of events as well.
Okay. And what kind of events do you do?
I do anything from I've been doing a lot of stuff with Always in the Club, which is a Mickey Mouse Club alumni group. And we've done a lot of like reunions for the entire show. 2019, we did the 30-year reunion in Orlando. So we had a huge event going on at Disney and transported fans all over all over the place in Orlando. It was the first thing I've done of that caliber. That was amazing. And I've done a lot of just local shows as a VIP assistant. I've Yesterday worked at a convention for Chick-fil-A. I try to do as much as I can and get involved and just see everything that's going on in events as a whole, whether it's a huge festival or a banquet event or, live touring events.
Nice. So for people who don't know what exactly an events manager does, right? So explain to people what that exactly that is.
Well, as far as a touring event, about a month ahead of a show happening, I will get contact for a promoter or an event manager at a venue. And I, introduce myself, the type of event that we're bringing with us, and coordinate, where my truck's going to load in. Um, if I need any like catering or bar staff and just physical items I could need from them, find a room space that's going to accommodate the amount of people that I have. Um, oh my gosh. And a lot of it's dealing with like, ticketing, explaining the kind of tickets that we've sold, what those tickets involve. And, ahead of just that advancing with the show, of course, you have to, as the tour, plan what exactly you're going to offer your fans. So a lot of it is ironing that out first.
Seems like a
And
lot of logistics.
so much. I feel like on average as well with, I deal with a lot of the brands too, depending on for the band that I've been with the past couple years, there are different brand partnerships that, a tour could have like a certain kind of a beverage or a certain brand that they're promoting or the tour is presented by, and it's showing that brand off the way that they feel the most comfortable and that they want to be shown. So it's incorporating a lot of things that, I can have a whole vibe for my room. And like right now, mine is a lounge, like a speakeasy vibe. So if I get like a golf cart brand, I have to think of creatively how to incorporate that it's not cheesy or
Mhm.
just, you can't just throw something in there and make it look good. It has to all kind of mesh together. So creatively, I have a good handle on input as well. So I really like that part probably the most.
Wow, it does sound very like small little intricate things that need to be done, and organizing certain things with certain people. So from that, like, what is something that you wish you could, I guess, have everybody understand about your job exactly?
Well, I don't know if I wish people could understand this, but a funny comment that I hear often is, you know, as a fan or even my family, a lot of times are like, you're just throwing a party. And a lot of that's the trickery of what we do is I'm supposed to make it look easy. And I'm told a lot of times by people that I work with that I'm very calming. And the funny part is I've actually suffered from like anxiety from probably age 11 to present. And a lot of what I do is very anxious, like, quick problem solving. But I have learned that that's the way that I do best is, quick problem solving, putting out fires all the time that, fans or attendees, you would have no idea it's going on. I could have a security issue at the front door and nobody knows it's happening. So a lot of that is one of the top things that I'm doing all the time. And I just look like I'm standing there, fly on the wall, having a great time, just like chill. But that's really what other people I don't think really realize. A lot of times, if I'm standing around, they don't know that I'm like watching certain things, making sure things aren't stolen, or I'm always getting a view of the room and very observant. Um, but I don't really want people to know that because that's
Yeah.
the point of what I'm doing. But I always just kind of chuckle to myself when people say, "You're just having a like you're throwing a party. It's not hard. You have the fun job." I'm like, yep, I
Yep. Pretty
do, and
much.
it is
Yeah.
fun.
So, when you first started, did you pretty much like have a grasp on this, or did you have some kind of former experience, or were you kind of like trained on the job, or maybe have somebody who taught you?
Well, when I was actually in college, I wanted to study TV. Well, I did study TV production, and I wanted to work on red carpets, and I wanted to work at E Entertainment. That was like my main goal. And it kind of fell into, I always wanted to work in the music industry as well. So I started thinking I wanted to work in music publishing, and I interned in music publishing, and that's where I really thought I was going to be. And I did an internship in LA for about a year, and it was like the best time of my life. And I went back to school to finish college, and I just sent my resume out everywhere. And I have no idea how it landed here, but somebody at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio got my resume and asked me to come in for an interview. And I just kind of laughed because I didn't know anything about sports or any, I had no idea what to expect. And I also had no idea how anybody got my information there. And that was my first event job. Um, and I had no idea what to expect. I'd always thought events were like wedding planning. And the Pro Football Hall of Fame was the best place I could have started because it's a nonprofit since it's a museum. And there were like 4 to 5 of us that worked in events there, but we would have multiple parties going on at one time. So it would be, we could have 6 to probably 13 if it was enshrinement week. And that gave me a good experience with like banquets or meetings. And then we would do, Hall of Fame week, enshrinement week, when all the Hall of Famers had their big private parties. It was like very Hollywood-esque. And I got a huge assortment of events that I worked on there. But because there was, not that much staff, I had to move the tables and chairs, reset rooms. And these rooms could be huge, like ballrooms. And I would be moving tables and stuff by myself in like heels and dress pants and a polo. And, you're moving all this stuff around, sweating like crazy. But then in the next room, I have to be like, okay, I haven't been sweating. I have to look like I'm, running a professional meeting and come in and be like, can I get you anything? But in reality, I'm like drenched and just felt like I got to work out in. So um, that experience there, I did everything. It was just very, nothing of what I expected, but you're dealing with caterers, bartenders, doing the actual setup, the planning, everything. And that really prepared me the most. But it was also very shocking when I went to a touring job when you have stagehands that can help you. So I'm always very gracious to stagehands that most people probably think I'm nuts, but I'm like, hey, I remember the days I used to have to do this all by myself. So I don't take that for granted at all. But I would say that was the most shocking. It was, the first day when I started at the Football Hall of Fame, I got a table, like a rolling table thrown at me, and I
Oh,
had
wow.
heels on, and it was like, catch it. And I always forget, or I'll never forget that day because I felt like my boss was really interviewing me, like, she gonna do it? So it was it was a great experience though, and I think that that really shaped events for me. And after, sorry,
No, you're fine.
after I had that position, um actually when I was at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it was one of trying to think of the football player. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a Tampa Bay inductee, and I was running his party of like 1,000 people or so. And I was running all the AV, dealing with all of the just, he was doing a presentation at the same time. It was so much, and it was just me. It was like 1,000 people. And we had so many different parties on campus at the time. So all my coworkers were elsewhere. And I will never forget, it was the top of August, and he had a ice bar.
Mhm.
And it was just humid as can be, so hot. This ice bar, although a great idea, was terrible in the heat because it was just melting at the most rapid rate you can imagine. And it was late afternoon, early evening. And naturally, as most people do, put their glassware on a bar. And even as you're, kids think of having a little puddle of water and you put your glass on it, and it's like magic, it moves.
Right.
So everyone's doing that on this ice bar. And I end up the entire event, as I'm juggling other things, I'm juggling glasses to make sure that they don't fall from this ice bar as drunk, industry people are putting their glasses on it. So I end up juggling glassware the whole end, and I'm just like sweating because I'm nervous that glass is going to fall, somebody's going to get cut, something bad's going to happen. And I just remember I'm running back and forth like a mad woman, and this little old man stops me. He stopped me and he said, ma'am. And I stopped and I looked at him and I was like, yes, can I get you something? Just hustling through doing my job. And he said to me, oh no, I just want to stop and let you know that it's so nice. You look like you have to be tired. You're running around like mad, and you have the biggest smile on your face. You must really love what you do. And it totally took me by surprise because I was just hustling, doing my job, not even thinking about what I looked like or what my face looked like. And it was just so nice to hear that I was smiling without even knowing it. And it really said a lot to me about, I was like, oh wow, I really do love what I'm doing. Like, this is actually so much fun for me. And it's just something that really stuck with me. And I have no idea who that man was or couldn't tell you anything about it, but he was just that alone has really stood out to me to keep me on path as far as events go. Because after I left that Hall of Fame job, I'd gotten an offer in LA that was my absolute dream job, I thought at the time, to work in music publishing. And so I actually shed a lot of tears taking that job because I was loving what I was doing, but it was my dream job. And I was like, I have to do this because this is what I've been waiting for. But I really love everything I'm doing right now. And it was really hard for me to do it, even though I felt like, this was the chance and I had to just make the jump for it. And I ended up moving to LA for almost 3 years. And I worked in music publishing, and it was a good experience, but it was very like the movie A Devil Wears Prada. It was very hard. I felt a lot of, just the classic, what people put in movies, like Hollywood boss treatment is what I got. And it really stripped me down to like see what I valued and what I wanted. And there was a point that I was in that job and I looked up at the person I was working for, just kind of like pictured on a ladder. I was like, if I'm climbing this ladder, do I want to be like the person above me? I don't think I do. And then I quit and I
Yeah.
went back to Ohio and spent some time with my family for a couple months. And I had the realization too when I was in LA. I had somebody at that job. I had a lot of people that were like, you know, you smile too much. And I was like, what?
That
Like, it
feels like
was just,
something somebody from New York would say that.
oh yeah, it was very weird comments like that. And I was like, this is so strange. Like, I can't believe people are saying these kinds of things. But I can't tell you, when I left that job, I had at least 8 people immediately email me and say that I was the only person that ever said good morning. That
Oh,
were like, oh
wow.
my gosh, I'm gonna miss you being the smiling person saying good morning. And I was just kind of shocked at those kinds of things, because I felt internally that way. I felt like I just didn't belong.
Now, where
Um,
are you from LA
no,
originally?
I'm from Ohio originally.
Ohio. That's right. Okay. Go ahead.
And
Sorry.
no, it's okay. I always thought like I was going to be an LA girl for sure. Like I've loved that city forever. That's, in TV, that's all I ever thought I was going to do. Um, and I had that job in publishing after working in events. And I just realized like, oh, this isn't actually what I should be doing.
Right.
And I had one girl at that job that I ended up working for a short time. And it was a very gaslighting kind of personality I was dealing with. But she was like, you just act like you don't care about your job. And I knew that wasn't true. But I compared it to that little old man in the hallway that I saw at the Hall of Fame. And I was like, look at these two differences of experiences. When I was working for a nonprofit, doing all these like crazy random tasks, working my butt off and sweating and getting into crazy messes, that I had a person comment that I was so happy. And this person was like, you don't care. And it was just that whole realization, whether that was, the truth or not. And it was just somebody's personality trying to gaslight or just being negative. I made the decision then. I was like, I don't need to do this anymore. So I
So,
took a break and went back to Ohio.
so let me ask you this. So while we're still on it. So for you, if you could go back and tell excuse me for that. If you could go back and tell your younger self before you even got involved with that job in the music industry, right? What would you tell yourself?
I really don't think I would have told myself, well, I think I would have told myself to just stay true to who I was and be proud of that. And not that I didn't act that way, but a lot of it did strip me down and break me to, I just felt very defeated. Like I still kept who I was, but I had a hard time after I had went through LA this, more recent years that I lived there. I felt like I didn't try hard enough. But I had read a quote sometime that said, if you could have done better, you would have or no, it was something like you did the best you could at the time with what you had. And because it's easy to look back on yourself and think like, oh, I could have done that a lot better. But at the time, I was so defeated and raw and just like fragile that I really couldn't have stood my ground as much, because I just was very like, I felt like a shell of a human. I was just like very scared. I just realized, I think, what I should have thought at the time, and now I'm so much better at it. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And I should have saved myself a lot of time and just cut it off earlier. So I could have also told myself, you don't have to stick anything out to prove anything to yourself. Just if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right.
Yeah.
And now I've been a lot more intuitive about things and listening to my intuition. Because at that time, and in your 20s, I feel like you're trying to prove something to yourself. Like quitting doesn't make you a quitter. It just means, I looked at that, like I said, and I was like, this isn't what I want to be. Goodbye. And I could have done that a lot sooner, but I felt like quitting was quitting instead of choosing myself and choosing that that's not the right thing for me.
Mm.
But
Okay.
that was
go
hard.
ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. That was it.
Okay. As far as because a lot of our listeners are either thinking about, entering into whatever industry, right? They're a guest come on here, or they're currently in the industry now. Um, if you had someone who's listening to you, who's listening to this podcast right now, and they, for example, want to get into your industry that you're in now, what's some steps that they can kind of take to start moving in that direction?
Well, I think now, with as hard as the industry has taken a hit from COVID and everything, I think now is the best time. Sorry,
You're
I don't
okay.
know what keeps popping in my throat. I think now is the best time for anybody if you want to get involved in any part of the entertainment industry. So I think been a big clearing of everything, like people that were, had just in any industry of any kind, people just get stuck and not even stuck, comfortable in a job, and they just continuously do it. I think the pandemic, because of all the layoffs and things like that, it's made a lot of people reflect on what they're doing and what they want to do and how they want to move forward. And a lot of people have left positions that they've held, um, to really focus on what they feel like feeds their soul. And even in touring now, we had so many positions that were open this last year in 2021. It was like an obscene amount of staff were needed that were just nowhere to be found. And I think the way that I've always looked at the entertainment industry too, no job is below you. It's always going to be a good complement to any job that you want. So even if there's a job open, like I'm saying with the Football Hall of Fame, if there's a job open, I just jumped in because I was like, I don't know. I don't really pay attention to football, but I'll try it. And that's just really, that ended up being what led me to being here, and what I really give a lot of credit to teaching me, the mentality. And like I said, moving tables and doing things like that were never below me. And even now I'll do it, even though I have helpers and people that can do it for me. It's still weird for me to not do it because I was so trained to do it. So I think there are so many positions out there, whether it's just working at a venue, in a box office, working as a security guard for a venue, or just doing something at a venue. If you're looking for live events, um, anything can get you there because you're going to meet so many people, and everything is just a stepping stone. It doesn't need to
Mhm.
be your forever, but I've done so many little things. I'll still now bartend other events for other people, and I'm learning about things that other people do to make me better at my job. And it's just nice to see, as a well-rounded worker, how things happen, because, I don't work on the concert itself, but it's like if I'm doing all of this other stuff, I can kind of understand it better as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, and it just makes it easier. But I don't think any job should be frowned upon if it's like in the same vicinity. If you just keep your eye on the prize and you're like, can't find anything, you can't find the perfect job, but there's, a security job open or a box office job, just do it and then see what happens and who you can meet. That I think everyone right now is just looking for motivated, good people. And I think now is the best time for that.
Love it. I love it. So, and then, if that individual, for example, well, let me ask you this. So do you have people who work under you for these events,
Um,
or is it just you?
I would say for, well, specifically for my touring job, I would say there's people I have to hire per show depending on, the size of it. We had a show in Nashville last fall, and I had to hire 22 people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And those jobs were because the venue was not able to provide, because there's I don't really know the reasoning, but there's been so many staffing issues this past year, just with all the COVID and changes and everything. And we had to hire bartenders and servers. And because it was an industry show, I had to do just to meet budget really. I had to hire all those people on my own. So I had to do, certain specifics to make sure they had their license to serve, that they were tested before the show, and all that kind of stuff. But they really work like alongside me because I can't do anything without a team of people also assisting because you can't run an event for anything. Like any of the projects I've worked on, it's all so team oriented.
Yeah. And but let me stop you there. So who's
Yeah.
your right hand woman or man after let's say you hire everyone? Because what I'm trying to get to is, if somebody's listening to this, you know, I love the advice of them hopping in wherever they can. But if somebody
Yeah.
specifically wanted to say, okay, I want to get as close as possible to the person who's hiring me, right? So who would be like that entry level right hand man or woman for you?
Gotcha. Okay. So for if we're touring and we're going to a specific venue, we have either I first connect with the promoter and they, pass my email along to a venue VIP rep sometimes. And it's different for every venue, but normally it's like they handle all the VIP events. And I'm not sure what other position they may hold. Um, but most venues are very well versed in having, tours that have some kind of VIP event to go along with it. So there's normally a coordinator of some kind that works at a venue. So that could be something locally. Somebody could start towards a position like that if they were interested in touring eventually, or if they wanted to do it just locally and, not have to travel. Um, Normally with that person, I'll coordinate, here's everything I have. What kind of rooms do you have for me? This is what I need. And then because our event also is very food and beverage heavy, there's also another rep that I would deal with on food and beverage. So that would also be a position that I work very closely with that somebody could hold that would, very well get to know a VIP experience. I'm not sure if it's like that for all
Mhm.
VIP touring, but as far as ours goes, I'm very well connected with the coordinator and food and beverage. And normally, day of show, that person is my right hand. Like, if I need something at the venue, if I need more trash cans, if I need, to hire somebody locally to help me out for the day with something extra that I didn't have for other shows, or um, bartenders and servers. Normally, I would go through that food and beverage person. And sometimes a lot of tours, not ours specifically, but other tours hire a lot of local reps to help, like doing ticket check-in and passing out merchandise.
Mhm.
A lot of companies that do that are like VIP Nation, and CID is one of my favorite ones. CID is actually the first company I ever worked for in like 2010, doing like music specific VIP events. And that was a great intro because you get to do the whole event setup with the touring rep, and you get to see like, cases and how to set up lights and backdrops, and how things pack up and how certain things are tour friendly and not, without being the person on the road. And there's really no rule book. Something I think is really interesting, um, especially with touring. If When I first started, I couldn't even Google, what do you do or how do you handle being on a bus, or what's etiquette? There's nothing to really look at, or no handbook,
Yeah.
which I think is really surprising. But you just really, if you're on a tour, you get thrown in.
Tell
And
me. So tell me about tour life then. Tell me about, what can they expect? Let's put it that way. As far as, you know,
so touring, you're on a bus with like 12 people, and you get very close to them really fast. Um, and I always laugh because I'm actually on our catering bus. So it works really well because we have a food activation in my party. So the chef that I work with on our event is also on my bus. So I get to like bug him the night before a lot of times when we're like going out for a weekend. And he always makes me laugh because he always says, like, after our events wrapping up, he's like, see you at home. Like, it really is our home and we all share it. And you have to be very, accommodating to everybody. So I've been on a bus at one time. There was an older gentleman that hated shoes in the hallways and they needed to be in a drawer. So he would be like, if I see your shoes in the hallway, I'm throwing them out the window and you will never see those shoes again. So that was my first year, was terrified of putting my shoes on the ground or like leaving them in the hallway under your bed. Cause I'm like, I don't know where to put them. So I would put them at the bottom of my bunk and like wrap them in a bag. Cause he scared me so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, you cannot throw my shoes out. Like what? And, then this last year, everyone had their shoes in the hallway. So I was like, so there's certain things that you'll learn that your family on the bus has certain, etiquettes that they're comfortable with that other buses aren't. So it's really just being open and upfront with everybody that you're living with. We all have our own bunks and I like to label them because if something's, lost, then you know exactly if it's a certain person's item, you can put it on their bunk and know for sure it's their bunk. And there's like a front lounge and a back lounge, and you absolutely do not talk by the bunk beds because anybody could be napping at any time. Always walk the bus whenever you leave it at all times. It's like should be second nature to just constantly do that. Because naturally, any tour bus, a fan's going to walk by and try to open it.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So there's always, making sure all your stuff is put away. It's not, a mess for anyone else. You're not like, you don't ever want to be the one that's taking over like a front lounge. And I'm somebody that has a whole skincare routine. So I'm like, I have my little bag and my little system and I keep it,
What about the hours? Are they crazy?
My hours, I pretty much start at 7:30 every morning. And I immediately walk off the bus. And one major thing about being on the bus, when you brush your teeth, you don't use the water. And the one thing everyone probably knows is you don't go number 2 on the bus. But you can't use the water. You have to use like a bottle of water with your toothbrush, which is always like a weird thing at first when you're not used to it. But you never know how much or how long the water has been sitting there. It's probably not clean. It's like, it smells like rotten eggs sometimes. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But little things like that, it becomes a part of it. So I always brush my teeth with a water bottle. And then I go off the bus and I just roam the venue looking for where my event space is and making sure my advanced plan for where my truck is going to load in, if that space still works, or is there a better space that's more accommodating for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's, for most tours, a VIP event person does not have their own truck. I have a full semi truck to myself. So I have a lot of equipment. Most people do not have that much equipment. So sometimes the whole element of my truck is like not even an issue for most people. But in the morning, that's like my first goal is to figure out the easiest way to get my stuff in there. Because too, we have to push it in. So to make sure it's not like gravel or something ridiculous, just trying to make it as easy as possible on stagehands and ourselves is a challenge every morning. Mm-hmm. And returning to venues is always like I keep a little diary of like, okay, this worked well, this did not work well. So I can always try to improve. But after I scope that out, I'll wait to get stagehands, bring them over to the truck, get everything unloaded. And I have a whole system of how I load it in to try to organize it so people aren't moving everything a million times because a lot of stuff's heavy.
Yep.
And that whole setup probably takes me until I would say around like 11:30 or noon. And then I just do like the fine details of like little things that I don't need the stagehands to do. Like little breakables that I would just rather do myself, or
Yeah.
like a band's guitar I have, or like an award or something. I keep all that stuff for myself. And I would say I'm done setting up by like 3. And then I take a little break, try to shower, um, and like change and look presentable, or grab a little something from catering and bring it back to my space and start getting ready to prep all of our bar and food staff and let them know like what's going on. I try to make them like brand ambassadors because they always get a million questions. Like bartenders are always like, "Hey, what does this mean?" And for the day they don't always know anything about what our activation is. So I try to make them feel educated and connected. And then I run a party until 8:30. And then
Sounds amazing.
yeah, and then I
At that point.
immediately wrap it. And it's like, and then everything gets torn down quick. And ideally, my goal is always to have my truck loaded before the show ends at 10:40. And that's if I'm very lucky, but it doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes it could be 2 in the morning.
Wow.
So my day could be from really 7:30 until 2 in the morning.
That's crazy. So again, it sounds to me like tour isn't for everyone, especially if because it sounds like you work pretty much all day, right? So
Mhm.
just hearing you from your daily routine, and that's not even given the things that may pop out of nowhere, right? These circumstances may just drop in your lap. Hey, we need you to do this, or we need you to do that, right?
Totally.
So that's awesome just to hear all that. So I wanted to ask you, so we're getting tight on time right now, right? So I got one last question for you, and then yeah, let me just ask you this. So if you were me right now, okay, and you were going to ask yourself a question, what would that question be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Um, I don't know. Why am I drawing a blank?
It's a hard question, I know.
It's a very
Every time I ask this to people, because it's a regular thing, they always blank out in the beginning.
Yeah, that's tough.
So if you can't think of one, what the best thing I would say, the next best thing would be, what would you let's say any advice, one piece of advice that you would give someone that wanted to enter into your industry?
That's kind of where I was that's what I was actually thinking of, is really something I think is very important in this industry, is that people know that it's very team oriented. I've met a lot of actually women that do this job, and everybody is a team player. It's not catty at all. Everyone's here to help each other. And I think that if this is something that you're interested in, anybody that you know in the touring world is very, very, you know, excited to help and lend any kind of offering. Where touring in general is a family of outcasts, of people that don't fit the norm. So we've all been the new kid before, and no question is a stupid one. Everybody's willing to share knowledge. It's not one of those things anybody should ever be embarrassed. Um, but that is something too. If you first get into touring, you should never feel like you're alone. And you always do have a team of people and family that you don't even know is family yet, but they quickly become like, you can be anywhere in the world and you have people that you can count on, that you can rely on. And there's a girl that I actually had a friend that hired me on to this group. And he is our stage manager and he is amazing. And he knew that this would have been the best job for me. And I can't thank him enough for it. But he was a very helpful part of me getting started, and um, really introducing me He took me around my first day, didn't make me feel like a weirdo and like you're like a lost kid at school on the first day. It was not like that for me at all. It was very nice to have that, but also other people on the tour knew I was new. And Candy, a girl that was riding my bus, still works with us today. She like saved me a bunk bed, did everything out of her way to help me and make me feel included. So I think, especially if somebody's starting a tour or wants to, and they're worried about just being alone and being scared, most tours I think have the most family oriented. Oh, let me show you around. Let me tell you this. And everybody's there to help each other because we've all been there before. And with every tour that you do, whether it's the same artist or a different one, you're going to have people like that that are like, let me show you the ropes. And that's something that I've always loved about touring. And if anybody's ever interested in it or nervous about getting into it,
Mhm.
you don't have to worry about that aspect because you're going to learn it and people are going to be there to help you along the way.
Fantastic. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, okay. So Yvette, we've reached our time. I want to say thank you so much for coming on. If let's say, for example, some people wanted to reach out to you to maybe touch base with you or check out your social media platforms, or if you have a website, just to ask questions, what would be your handles?
Yes, my handles on everything are just my first and last name. So Yvette Cherkala, which I'm sure they can see spelling in your bio and everything. But yeah, very just simple my name, and I guarantee I'm the only one out there. So very easy to find.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time and thanks for inviting me.
Anytime.